Welcome to Theriome's Practitioner Clinical Training and Onboarding Series. Today, we're going to be talking about the Aristotle Longevity Index or the Aging Index. My name is Dr. Gail King. I have a private membership practice in Aspen, Colorado, and I focus on longevity medicine. My background is I am board certified as an OBGYN, but also in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. Today, I'm hoping that you are going to be able to define what longevity is, understand the hallmarks of longevity, understand the Theriome Aristotle test in relationship to their aging index and what metabolites they use, and apply the Theriome Aristotle test to a patient who's desiring to optimize their personal longevity. As an outline today, we're going to start with the background of what is longevity, the epidemiology, lab testing you might obtain, the pathophysiology and associated metabolites. We'll also do a case study and then finish with some examples of the Theriome Aristotle report. And just of note, longevity medicine is actually the fastest growing field of medicine that there is. So if you have not started to incorporate longevity medicine into your practice, this is something I would highly recommend that you do. It's very rewarding and things are just happening at the speed of light. So what we're going to talk about today is very timely. So the actual definition, longevity definitions that we'll be using today, first of all, is life expectancy. And life expectancy is calculated as the average lifespan of a population. So it's the amount of time a person is expected to live based on a certain period of time. So life expectancy, obviously, in the year 1900 is different than here in 2024. And it's going to depend on what year you were born, what your age is, your current age, and the gender, and what kind of medical conditions you might have throughout your lifetime. Longevity itself is when a person lives beyond the average life expectancy for a human. It also means that you're living a longer and healthier life. And specifically, your health span is the period of time that you spend healthy during your lifespan. To date, the oldest living human was Jean Calmette, and she lived to be 122 years old. Based on Dr. Hayflick's Hayflick limit, it is theorized that we can only live to be 125 years old. And that is based on the fact that he found that cells could only divide between 40 and 60 times before they became senescent and either underwent apoptosis or became senescent. And that was very dependent on telomere length. It's really important to note that his theory was based on tissue cultures in petri dishes, so in vitro, and not specifically in humans. Theoretically, if we were able to lengthen telomeres, that Hayflick limit should be able to be expanded. The epidemiology of, let me just move this up here just a little bit here. The epidemiology of longevity is that actually longevity itself is to be considered an epidemic. And that is because the rates of survival to advanced old age have increased dramatically over the past century, greater than what we would have expected based on human history throughout time. In the 1800s, the average life expectancy did not go up that much, maybe from the mid 30s to the age of 47. In the year 1900, the average life expectancy for a woman was 47. Now, the average life expectancy for a woman in the United States is mid to lower 80s. So based on throughout human history, we would not have expected to go from 47 to 80s over the course of 100 years. And if you look at the people who were born in the year 1910, only about 3% of them made it to 90 years or greater. And if you compare that to someone who's born in the year 2000, we project that approximately 15% of men and maybe 20 to 25% of women will actually reach the age of 90. So in that course of a 90-year time span, the life expectancy, the number of people reaching advanced age has grown exponentially. And if you are wanting to be someone who reaches the age of 90 or greater, it would be very helpful to be white. 88% of people who do reach advanced age are of white descent. African Americans make up about 7.6%, Asians 2.2%, and Hispanic heritage makes up about 4% of people reaching 90 or older. One of the biggest predictors of being able to live to be 100 is having great parental longevity. So if both your mom and dad live to be 100, there's a much better chance that you will be able to do that. If we look at this graph here, this is showing the top part of the graph is looking at how many people, both men and women, men in the light gray, women in the dark gray, in the year from the year 1900 to 1999, what percentage of those people might be expected to live to 90 years of age? And you can see in the year 1900, it's way down there. Throughout time, women always outlive men in general. And the bottom graph is actually looking at the percentage of people who will reach 100 years. And you can see in the year 1900, that was basically non-existent. And somebody who's born in 1999, they're only expecting about 3% of women and 1% of men to reach 100 years of age or older. The increase in life expectancy during the first part of the 20th century was due to advances in our environment. For example, clean water, having sewage, not having raw sewage in the streets, having sewage contained, using antibiotics, having better nutrition, better food. All of those things increased life expectancy in the early part of the 20th century. In the second part of the 20th century, the greatest gains actually happened in people who were already of advanced age, but we are basically managing their diseases better. So if somebody has heart disease, they're not dying of their heart attack because we're able to give them treatments that are enabling them to live longer. And conventionally, the types of testing somebody might look at for longevity would be basic ones, a CBC, comprehensive metabolic panel, a lipid panel, including ApoA1 and ApoB, high sensitivity or cardiac specific C-reactive protein, thyroid studies, including TSH, free T3, free T4, and thyroid antibodies, a hemoglobin A1C, and some people might even look at vitamins and minerals. In the year 2013, a group got together and decided the original 9 hallmarks of aging, and they were telomere attrition, genomic instability, epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, deregulation of nutrient sensing, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, stem cell exhaustion, and altered intercellular communication. In 2023, 3 more were introduced, that being dysbiosis, chronic inflammation, and disabled macroautophagy. They have since, there are more hallmarks that are being recommended, but basically they all are variations on the theme of what has already been described. And one question that we should be asking at this point is, should we be classifying aging as a disease? Because if we do, that means that we can actually manage it, we can diagnose it, and we should be able to treat it and reverse it, just like we do other diseases. So if we look at each of those hallmarks of longevity individually, I'll just kind of describe each one of them. So with telomere attrition, telomeres are the protective end caps of our DNA. Every time your cells divide and your DNA is replicated, a little bit of that telomere length is lost. Once those cells have undergone a certain number of cell divisions, and according to Dr. Hayflick, it's only between 40 and 60 times, then that telomere is too short, and that cell is no longer capable of dividing. And at that point, it either dies, undergoes apoptosis, or it becomes senescent, commonly known as a zombie cell. With genomic instability, every cell in our body fixes DNA about 20,000 times per cell per day. So if any DNA does not get repaired properly, that means that going forward, that abnormal DNA is going to get propagated. And that is what genomic instability is. Comparing that to epigenetic alterations, in this case, the DNA it stays the same. This is not a matter that the DNA has changed. You have the same DNA that you were born with, but what gets transcribed is being altered. And that can be something like adding a methyl group to a DNA adduct, and that can either upregulate it so that that DNA gets transcribed, or it can actually prevent it from being transcribed. You can also have post-translational modification to the histones and chromatin remodeling. So epigenetic alterations, the DNA stays the same, but it's just what gets transcribed is different. In loss of proteostasis, all of our proteins in our body has a process whereby proteins undergo very specific folding patterns, but they also can be degraded and recycled. But when this process is altered, abnormal proteins can accumulate within cells, and the cellular function will be disrupted. With deregulation of nutrient sensing, this is the ultimate link between aging and diet. So this is where you're going to think about those yin-yang pathways of mTOR and AMPK. mTOR being the anabolic pathway, AMPK being the catabolic pathway, but also rest, restore, and renew. So this is the key thing that happens, is deregulation of nutrient sensing. Mitochondrial dysfunction, the mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, and the mitochondria can be damaged through a variety of different ways. They can have reactive oxidative species can cause oxidative damage. They can also have enzyme deficiencies, cannot have enough precursors to make all of the energy that the mitochondria need. So mitochondrial dysfunction is a major source of a process of aging. Cellular senescence. So senescent cells are those cells that are no longer dividing. So the way I describe this to my patients, I say, let's say this is a liver cell. This liver cell is no longer doing liver things. It's not detoxifying anything, but it didn't die. And because it's senescent, it by its very nature, it is inflammatory, and it will invade cells next to it, making them zombie cells. So it becomes this inflammatory cascade. So we will accumulate more cellular senescent cells as we age, and part of that is from telomere attrition. Stem cell exhaustion. So stem cells are how we replenish cells that have died off in our body. So if you have a cell that's actively dividing, it's going to replicate itself. That's one way for you to make new cells. But once that cell becomes a zombie cell, or it becomes apoptotic and our body gets rid of it, the only way to replace that cell would be through stem cells. And as we age, the number of stem cells that we make are very, very limited. They're abundant when we're young, and as we age, they're only in certain tissues. Stem cells are found in our germ cells. They are found to a limited extent in our immune system, but the number of stem cells, the absolute number, declines as we age. Altered intercellular communication. Cells communicate to each other via chemical and electrical stimuli. And if this communication is interrupted, then the entire system no longer communicates properly. And this leads to something we call inflammaging. The three additional hallmarks of aging were dysbiosis. And this is an alteration in the microbiome, and this can be anywhere in the body. But if we look specifically in the gut, the bacteria in the gut, the number of bacteria we have in our gut actually outnumbers the number of cells that we have in the rest of our body. And because bacteria have their own genetic code, their genes can be epigenetically coded for and can influence what our genome and our epigenetic expression. So it's really important that we have the right kind of bacteria and microbiome in our body to make sure that we're getting beneficial signals and not signals that would be deleterious. Chronic inflammation, this is really a result of many of the other hallmarks of aging, and it results in this inflammaging. Disabled macroautophagy, this is a quality control measure that has been preserved throughout evolution. And basically, it's a process where lysosomes within the cell will degrade abnormal protein aggregates, pathogens, and damaged organelles. And without this process, this intracellular stuff accumulates. I liken this to hoarding buried alive, but on a cellular level. If anybody's ever seen that show, you know what I'm talking about. If your cells are stuffed full of things that are not functioning properly and are just there doing nothing, your cells aren't going to work very well. So the primary hallmarks of aging were the original hallmarks of aging were broken down into three categories. The first one was the primary hallmarks of aging, and they are considered to be the main drivers behind cellular damage and accelerated aging. And they included genomic instability, telomere attrition, epigenetic changes, and loss of proteostasis. The antagonistic hallmarks of aging represent the body's response to damage, and in early stages, they produce beneficial effects or hormetic effects. But in chronic and exacerbated activation produces adverse health outcomes over time. The antagonistic hallmarks are deregulated nutrient sensing. So this is again, mTOR, AMPK pathways, mitochondrial dysfunction, and cellular senescence. And then the integrative hallmarks of aging represent the primary reasons for functional decline observed as we age. And these are stem cell exhaustion and altered intercellular communication. If we want to look at a person, what are the physical predictors of longevity? You could measure their VO2 max. Grip strength is a very big predictor, as well as leg strength. Balance is very important. And the amount of muscle mass somebody has as they age, as well as the amount of muscular power that they have. And all of those can be measured. The biggest diseases we see with aging are heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. If we're talking to our patients, what are the basic principles that you should do for longevity? These are things we've told people forever, right? You should eat a healthy diet. You should not drink too much. You should exercise. You want to make sure you're getting enough sleep, not just enough sleep, but good quality sleep. You need to get into deep sleep and REM sleep. Don't smoke. You should manage your stress. You should stimulate your brain. In other words, you need to make new neural connections and engage socially. And it turns out this last one is imperative. Hermits really don't live very long. People who have a social network and who engage regularly with other people live longer. In Aristotle's Theriome, Aristotle's test, their aging index looks predominantly on 7 different metabolites, and that's sarcosine, fumaric acid, palmitic acid, spermidine, stearic acid, and cadaverine. There are other metabolites that are associated with aging. We have metabolites from amino acids, metabolites from lipids, steroid hormones, from oxidative stress, your diet, inflammation, and the excretion metabolites. But the 7 that Theriome uses specifically in their aging index were the ones listed on the prior page. I would like to give you a case study in longevity, and this is actually very personal to me because this is actually my personal story, and I'm going to share it with you because it's a pretty good example of what can happen if you start looking at what you can do for longevity. So back in January of 2022, I was a 59-year-old white female. I had a very high-stress job in medicine. At the time, I would say my complaints were fatigue and an inability to lose weight. I had developed chronic sleep issues, which began in perimenopause and characterized by the inability to fall asleep and then waking up at 3 a.m. like clockwork, like somebody set the alarm clock. I did start bioidentical hormone therapy at the age of 48, so well prior to menopause. I worked out regularly 3 times a week with a personal trainer, both weight training and aerobic exercise. And my diet at the time was mostly ketogenic. My blood pressure had been low most of my life, but at that time, my blood pressure was now in the quote high normal range. I had been looking at longevity markers for the past 18 years, and I had been when I did my first telomere test, my chronological age was 10 years younger than my biological age. And I have taken an herbal telomerase activator for the on and off for the past 18 years. I also did toxicity testing very early on in this process and found that I had incredibly high levels of both mercury and PCBs. I have done extensive detoxification through IV therapy and oral therapy over the course of 18 years. And my health goal is that I want to live forever. So my main symptoms, the inability to lose weight, I was tired, I had sleep disruption, and one thing is that I really at that time thought I was doing everything I could for my health and longevity, but I had a rude awakening. So my family history is such that my father had hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and atrial fibrillation. My paternal grandmother had genetically high triglycerides. My past medical history was significant for Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I was pre-diabetic. I was on hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical. I was diagnosed with osteopenia at the age of 48 despite lifting weights. And I inherited my grandmother's genetically high triglycerides. My surgical history, I had a hysterectomy at the age of 40, but I still had my ovaries, so I did not go through premature menopause. I did have a tonsillectomy at the age of 15, so I had a lot of antibiotic use and chronic infections in early life. When I started this journey in January of 2022, I weighed 224 pounds and my BMI was 32. My blood pressure was 124/84, which most people would say is pretty okay, but that was pretty high for me based on where I was the rest of my life. In April of 2024, after doing all the things I'm going to describe for you, my weight is now 150 pounds. I have a BMI of approximately 18, and my blood pressure is what it was previously, 100/72. So prior to intervention, my lifestyle was that I ate mostly a ketogenic diet for approximately 15 years. I do take Xanax to fall asleep. I monitor my sleep every night with a smart watch, and my sleep scores are consistently high between 85 and 99. And most of that variation is based on how long I actually sleep. I do get good REM sleep and deep sleep. I exercise 3 times a week with a trainer, aerobic and weight training. And in the beginning, my stress was beyond extreme. And I was really in denial about that for a very long time until I got the health markers back and I realized that my health was actually failing and that I had to do something. I could not keep doing what I was doing. I had to right the ship. So after the intervention started, I went to a more balanced omnivorous diet. I quit my job as a GYN surgeon and I started my new longevity concierge practice. So the lab work that really got my attention happened in October of 2021. This was non-fasting blood work, but my hemoglobin A1C was 6.1, a glucose of 128. I had stage 3 renal insufficiency with a creatinine of 1.1. I had fatty liver with mildly elevated LFTs. My cholesterol could not be measured accurately because you can see my triglycerides were 685, and therefore the calculated LDL of 78 was inaccurate. But one thing you can notice, my HDL was very low at 35. My C-reactive protein had been elevated around 6 for approximately 18 years. At this particular time, it was still elevated, but not quite as much at 4.5. I had normal thyroid function at this point. My hormones were in healthy levels, that of a premenopausal woman. My vitamin D was on the low side at 52. My cortisol midday was 15.5, which was quite elevated. And my MCG, which is a multifunction cardiogram, a very advanced EKG, showed that I had microvascular heart disease. No evidence of plaque buildup, but microvascular heart disease for sure. In April of 2024, I had repeat fasting blood or non-fasting blood work. My hemoglobin A1C was now at 5.1, my glucose 77. My kidney function had resolved somewhat down to a creatinine of 1.0. My liver function tests were normal. A true cholesterol was now 194. You can see my HDL went up into a much healthier range at 56, a true LDL of 116, and triglycerides of 75, which are the lowest they've ever been in my lifetime. My C-reactive protein is now 0.6. My vitamin D is a healthy 90. And my MCG, which I do approximately every 6 months, is continuing to improve and show that my microvascular heart disease is improving. So what did I do? So prior to January of 2022, the only medications I took were Xanax to go to sleep and bioidentical hormone therapy. In January of 2022, when I realized I had to do something to change the, direction, the trajectory of the way my health was going, I did start on metformin with dinner, and I did start a GLP-1 agonist. First, I started semaglutide and then switched to tirzepatide approximately 3 months later due to the plateau of weight loss. In March of 2023, I went to Costa Rica and had 400 million umbilical cord derived stem cells injected via IV. In June of 2023, so 3 months after the umbilical cord stem cell therapy, I began rapamycin, taking 3 milligrams a week. I started a senolytic activator, 3 capsules weekly, which contained fascitin, quercetin, and apigenin. I take Epitalon 100 milligrams sub-Q every 6 months, and that's for telomere lengthening. I take NMN 500 milligrams every day, and creatine monohydrate, D-ribose, and niacinamide 500 milligrams daily. When I did the Aristotle test on myself, it was back in April of 2024. And at that time, I had achieved all of my goals. I was down to my ideal body weight, and you saw what my labs were. And my aging index actually came out with a score of 10 out of 10. So the higher the score, the better. The AI recommendations were that I do a methionine restricted diet at least 2 days a week, and that I incorporate polyphenol rich foods throughout the day, and to adopt an intermittent fasting schedule, 16 hours of fasting to 8 hours of eating daily, and once a month do a 24-hour fast. So during that time period, so January of 2022 till April of 2024, I reversed my diabetes, prediabetes, my kidney function improved, my microvascular heart disease is improving, my weight is stable now at an ideal body weight. My latest telomere test showed that I am 6 years biologically younger than my chronological age. My toxicity testing shows I no longer have heavy metals or other solvents as toxins. And my Theriome Aristotle aging index test was a 10 out of 10. So the reason I share my story is that I want people to know, I'm now 62, coming up on 63, that this is something that you can take people and you can change their life around. You can really take someone who was basically a train wreck and get them on the road to longevity. But you have to really look at all of those markers and address each and every one of them individually. So what I'd like to show now are some case examples of other people's Aristotle tests. So just briefly to remind you what the Theriome Aristotle test is, it is a blood test. It is done via a finger stick. You are going to put 2 drops of blood on a blotter pad and send it back. Each blood spot only needs to be about 1 centimeter in diameter. They take that blood spot, they look for 126 different metabolites, they put the data into an AI computer algorithm, and then they create your digital twin within that AI computer. The digital twin then gets subjected to 1,000 different permutations of what if we change your diet, exercise, and supplements 1,000 different ways. That way you don't have to do that to your patients. The computer's doing that to their twin. And what you get out of it is a recommendation from the AI simulations, and they are only going to report the changes that the AI computer predicts is going to make a major change or significant impact on that patient's individual health index that it's looking at. So in this particular patient, their Aristotle Aging Index is a 3, and their index goes from 1 to 10. 1 to 3 is considered red or high need for improvement. 4 to 7 is normative. 8 to 10 is optimized. And in this particular case, this person has an aging index of 3. So you see the 7 different metabolites that are taken into consideration for the aging index. What you should know is that some of the metabolites are weighted more heavily than others. So I happen to know that sarcosine and spermidine happen to be weighted more heavily than some of the other metabolites that are measured here. And so you can see this person has a very, very low level of sarcosine, niacinamide, and palmitic acid, as well as stearic acid. And the overall score came out as a 3. When we look at what the AI computer recommended in this particular case, they recommended this person supplement with niacinamide mononucleotide, or NMN, 500 milligrams daily. I should also say that when you get the recommendations from the AI simulation, they may make a recommendation for a dietary change, they may make a recommendation for a supplement change, or they may say, hey, you can do this either way. But if they are specifically saying they want you to do it through diet, there's a reason. If they're saying they want you to get it specifically from a supplement, there is a reason. So I adhere when I'm doing this with my patients, I try to adhere to what the AI recommendation is. In this particular case, again, they're recommending NMN 500 milligrams daily, to introduce fisetin at 100 milligrams daily for 3 months, astaxanthin 12 milligrams daily, and include spermidine-rich foods through foods like wheat germ and mushrooms, 1 to 2 tablespoons of wheat germ daily. They also wanted this person to practice intermittent fasting at a 16-8 protocol, basically to skip breakfast. They gave scientific reasoning, rationale, which I love, and so that your patients, it's not just a matter of you telling them, hey, these are the things you should do, and this is what the computer says. They're giving you the scientific reason behind it. And my patients are very invested in their health, and they like to know the scientific reasoning. So the NMN was there to boost NAD levels at the cellular level and for mitochondrial repair. Fisetin is for senolytic properties to clear the senescent cells, kill those zombie cells. Astaxanthin is protecting against oxidative stress and DNA damage. And the spermidine supports autophagy. Now, autophagy is, hoarding buried alive. It's all of that intracellular things that need to be cleaned up. And the fasting enhances mitochondrial efficiency and reduces aging biomarkers. So in this next case, this person also has a very low aging index. They are in the red with an index level of 3 as well. But you can see in this particular case, they have very low levels of palmitic acid, and in this case, spermidine. And again, I do know that spermidine weighs a little bit more heavily than some of the other metabolites, and thus the aging index came out at a very low level. The AI computer recommendations were to combat cellular aging and promote mitochondrial health, to take 300 milligrams of NMN or nicotinamide riboside daily. So in this case, they're giving you the option to use either one of those. And this was to boost NAD levels for mitochondrial efficiency and DNA repair. They want this person to begin supplementation 1 milligram of spermidine daily in the evening, very specifically. Spermidine induces autophagy, and that's to clear the damaged cells, and it also is reducing senescent cells. In this particular case, I prescribed this patient a supplement called Spermidine Life with NAD. It has NMN in it. And so with one product, I'm able to give them their spermidine and their NMN NAD precursor in one supplement. The adding 6 milligrams of astaxanthin daily as a potent antioxidant, and to adopt a 16-8 intermittent fasting protocol. They also wanted them to consume polyphenol-rich foods throughout the day. That would be things like dark berries, green tea, and dark chocolate. In this particular case, their Aristotle aging index is a 5. So this is in the quote normative range, but certainly there's still room for improvement. And here you can see very low levels of niacinamide, fumaric acid, spermidine, and stearic acid with high levels of cadaverine. And cadaverine is exactly what it means. It's something that is found in cadavers. You certainly don't want to have a lot of dead, basically, metabolites. In this particular case, the AI recommendations, their key findings suggested suboptimal, suggested oxidative stress and subpar cellular repair mechanisms. That they found metabolites indicative of elevated homocysteine, reduced NAD and NADH ratios, and low glutathione. So they are taking into account other metabolites, but these were the indications that it said. And those are the things that we're going to try to correct. So they recommended NAD precursors, NMN 500 milligrams daily taken in the morning with food. So they're being very specific about the timing. And this is to boost mitochondrial repair and repair cellular senescence. I prescribed this patient a supplement. The brand name is Vitality NMN. They take 1 scoop daily. Glutathione, take liposomal glutathione, 1,000 milligrams daily in the morning to combat oxidative stress and enhance detoxification. I prescribed them Quicksilver brand liposomal glutathione, 4 sprays in the morning. And they recommended intermittent fasting on a 16-8 schedule. This next example, their aging index is a 7. So this is in the high side of the normative range. There's still room for improvement. They're not up yet in the optimal range. And here you can see most of the metabolites are actually normal, but they do have high levels of spermidine. The AI recommendation recommended supplementing specifically niacinamide, 500 milligrams a day for NAD, and to take that in the morning with food. The scientific rationale was for the need to enhance mitochondrial function and to combat fatigue and chronic pain, and that niacinamide is essential for DNA repair and cellular energy. They also recommended spermidine 1 milligram daily or increased foods like wheat germ. So here they're giving them the option of having either a supplement or doing it through a food source. The timing is with breakfast, and the scientific reasoning is to promote autophagy. In this case, I'm not actually showing you the metabolites. I'm just going to show you the AI recommendations because I want to give you an idea of some of the other recommendations for the aging index specifically that you might encounter. So in this one, it says the key metabolites are taurine, spermidine, and resveratrol-related pathways. They want them to begin spermidine 1 milligram, resveratrol 250 milligrams, and taurine 1 gram daily in the morning with food for optimal absorption. And they give the scientific reasoning that spermidine enhances autophagy. That's a process linked to anti-aging. Resveratrol promotes SIRT1 activation for longevity, and taurine supports mitochondrial function and antioxidative defense. The lifestyle intervention, they're also recommending that 16-8 intermittent fasting schedule to improve longevity markers via metabolic flexibility and to reduce insulin signaling pathways. This is specifically that mTOR AMPK pathway that we think about. We want to spend less time in mTOR and more time in AMPK. In this example, the key metabolites were sarcosine and spermidine, and the recommendations were to take 2 milligrams of spermidine with a meal to enhance autophagy and cellular repair. And they gave them the option of doing this either through wheat germ or via supplementation. They also wanted them to include broccoli sprouts, sulforaphanes, 50 grams daily to promote methylation pathways and combat oxidative stress, and to limit high stearing foods consumption, to reduce consumption of the high stearic acid foods like certain processed meats, to improve lipid balance and cellular aging markers. That means that they saw that their lipids were out of balance and that there were cellular aging markers in their metabolites. In this particular case, this person had an aging score of 7, which they say is within the normative range, but indicates room for optimization to support longevity. The key metabolites were cadaverine and alpha tocopherol. The recommendations were to include NMN, 500 milligrams in the morning to boost NAD levels, resveratrol, 250 milligrams with a fat-containing meal to activate sirtuins, and to do regular cold therapy. So they want this person to do basically 3 5-minute cold plunges weekly to promote autophagy and longevity-related pathways. So there's a new recommendation we hadn't seen before. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what is the future of longevity. So there are predictions that by the year 2050, there will be 3.7 million people who are the age of 100 or older. So it behooves us to make sure that as our population is aging, that we are aging in a healthy manner. We don't want people who are old and not functioning. We don't need more people in nursing homes. If we're going to be living longer, we want to be very vibrant. We want to be members of the community that are still contributing. I want to be part of this community. I want to be productive well past 100. One of the predictions is that AI could increase the rate of biological discoveries, which could lead to biological progress over the next 50 to 100 years. Well, Theriome's already doing this. We're already there with Theriome with this Aristotle test, and they have another test, the LEI test, which is doing this also with your gut microbiome. The projection is the biological limit on human longevity could reach 150 years. Remember, right now it's predicted to be 125. And there are some models that predict that we theoretically could reach ages up to 310 years. Again, if we're going to reach these kind of advanced ages, we want to make sure that the people that are living this long are healthy this long. It's not just a matter of living to be in a nursing home. It's living to live and be productive. And once stem cell therapies and organ regeneration and other future biotechnologies develop more, we might even live longer. So basically, my approach with my patients, I'm going to give you my contact information here. If you would like, you can email me at drking@drgailking.com. But my basic approach with my longevity practice is that when my patients come in for their onboarding, I ask them what their current medical concerns are. I ask them what their health goals are. I want to know what's important to them. And then we do a lot of advanced testing, biological testing, and the Theriome Aristotle test rather has become the cornerstone of the testing that I do up front. I also test telomere length. I do that multifunction cardiogram. I am testing their hormones. I'm looking at as much information, biological biomarkers that I can, so that I get a really good snapshot of what we are starting with. What I love about the Aristotle test is that when I get that result back and I get those AI recommendations, it's not just me getting a number back. Okay, your hemoglobin A1C is 6.1. What am I going to do about that? They're actually telling me your aging index is a 3. These are the things that you specifically need to do to increase your aging index. So you saw that a lot of times some of the recommendations overlapped a little bit. There was a lot of trying to make more energy, mitochondrial energy through NAD precursors to make more ATP. There was looking at all of the different hallmarks of aging. We wanted to kill zombie cells. We want to lengthen telomeres. We want to and lengthening telomeres can be done through supplementation. It can be done through peptides. exercise, stress reduction, and very recently, there's studies showing that hyperbaric oxygen therapy can increase telomeres. There is going to be more use of stem cell therapies. And because stem cell therapies are very limited in the United States right now, when I did my cell therapy, I had to go to Costa Rica. Well, now legally in the United States, I can give PDPA, which is placental-derived protein arrays. We also call them cell factors. These are the healing cell factors that are derived from stem cells and are found in the exosomes of stem cells, but we've just taken them out of the stem cell itself, taken them out of the exosome, and we have them freeze-dried. So these cell factors, the healing cell factors, can now be given back, and we're giving back levels back to what somebody had when they were a teenager. So we're addressing each of those hallmarks of aging and trying to bring them back from where they were. And again, I am living proof that you can take someone at the age of, starting at the age of 59, and literally reverse their trajectory of their health. So if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them if you email me at drking@drgailking.com. And I appreciate you, your attention for this presentation. Thank you very much.